Support for this podcast comes from Arzell HVAC Zoning Technology. Arzell has been producing innovative zoning systems for over 35 years. We manufacture the highest quality HVAC zoning equipment from our factory in Cleveland, Ohio. Innovation, customer service, and outstanding products backed by a lifetime warranty are why so many contractors use only Arzell Zoning. We offer easy-to-install solutions from a basic 2-zone system all the way up to the most difficult zoning applications. For more information, go to arzellzoning.com or contact Annette Justice at annette@arzellzoning.com. To Your Success. To Your Success is the #1 gifting service for home services companies. You care about customers and want to grow your business through strong relationships. You want to express appreciation with something delightful and unexpected, but you need a process that's effortless for you while feeling incredibly relational to your customers. There is an answer, and it's pretty sweet. To Your Success provides a handcrafted thank you gift of delicious, freshly baked cookies with a custom thank you card that's drop shipped to your customer's door, creating a relationship building moment that cultivates loyalty. Visit www.toyoursuccess.com today to learn more and schedule your live demo and receive a complimentary freshly baked cookie gift.
Welcome to The Successful Contractor, powered by Success Group International, a show for residential contractors about residential contractors. We chronicle business journeys, share insights, and celebrate successes in this wonderful industry. I'm your host, Bob Houchin. Hello there, SGI family and other contractor friends. I'm so thankful you're here. As a reminder, all episodes of The Successful Contractor Show are available on YouTube, as well as your podcast player of choice. Today's show is another SGI Monthly Member Panel. These are interactive live programs where an SGI coach joins me and other SGI members to discuss a particular topic. This monthly member panel featured Lynn Tomasek of Brothers Plumbing, Heating, and Electric in Denver, Colorado, and Miki Stone, an SGI coach who had previously run several large residential home service companies prior to coming to SGI just a little more than a year ago. Now, among the three of us, we discuss how to effectively manage your managers. This is a topic we hear often at SGI because we have so many members who are rapidly growing and adding layers of their management team. Managing managers is a different animal than managing technicians, salespeople, or call center folks, or administrative folks. This was an exceptional conversation and an insightful one. Lynn is an incredible operator of Brothers, and Miki has a great amount of experience running highly profitable home service businesses. This is a must listen or must watch for owners and GMs trying to get the very most out of their management teams. With that being said, here's my discussion with Lynn Tomasek and Miki Stone as we discuss how to effectively manage your managers. I hope you enjoy it and take away a nugget or two. Very excited everyone's on the call today. I just love every opportunity to get to interact with you members. Again, today our topic's managing our managers. We have, unfortunately, one of our guests is not going to be able to make it. Stacy Feller was just notified, had a family emergency. I just found out about 10 minutes ago. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. But Stacy, of course, being Stacy, had written out all of her answers to all the questions we are going to go through today, and I'm going to share those, I think, through our weekly blog/email that you guys get on Wednesdays. I will find a way to share that there so you don't miss out on her great insight. So she has plenty of it. But we are very excited to have Lynn Tomasek of Brothers Plumbing, Heating, and Electric in Denver, Colorado. Bravo! Thank you, Lynn. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Very good, very good. Well, again, very excited that you're on. Great topic, because I know there's so many of our members that are growing and doing exceptionally well and looking to add layers to their team, so they're not the only ones making all the decisions. So, Lynn, just let us know. Let's just dive right into the questions a little bit. Just so everyone knows, you have three trades that you represent there at Brothers. What does your management team look like altogether? Who's responsible for keeping everything straight?
So we currently have just pretty much a single layer of management. We've got an operations manager for each of our three trades, plumbing manager, electrical, HVAC. My brother, who holds our plumbing masters, is also in the operations department and supports them, since our plumbing manager is non-technical. So they can buddy up and pair to balance that out and what is needed. We have a warehouse manager. I've got a manager for my customer service dispatch team. I have somebody in charge of HR and then marketing, and then my accounting manager, which actually is my sister, part owner as well.
That's great. Very good. Now, for those of you who don't know Miki came to us, I guess, about a year ago, right, Miki? Has it been that? Oh, wow. Okay. But before that, her previous life, she was a member for, I think, over 10 years, helped build a home services business from basically nothing in residential to around $10 million, I think, and very profitable by the time you came over to us. So you definitely have lots to share. So Miki, when you were with your previous employer, what did your management team look like? I know you were the general manager, but how about the next level?
Yeah. So, in my prior experience, I was a part of, different companies, and some, as you said, Bob, were literally me and the owners where we started. And I've been with organizations, over 100 employees. So specifically my last multi-trade company, we did HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. And so the management structure was the owner and myself as the vice president. And then I had a manager for each trade. So I had an HVAC service manager, a plumbing service manager, an electric service manager. I also had a sales manager, and then I had a client care manager who oversaw the call center and dispatch, an administrative manager who oversaw anything administrative, bookkeeping, permits, all that kind of stuff.
All that other stuff, yeah.
And then a human resources manager.
That's great. Very good. Very good. Thank you for the background. Lynn, I'm going to jump over to you. I know you and your siblings bought your dad out when he was ready to retire, and it was a very, very good business at the time. And I know you guys have taken it to another stratosphere. But given where the business was when the three of you took over, how did it change in terms of the management team? What positions were added? How did you decide responsibilities? And then what of those positions kind of helped you guys scale to where you are today?
So kind of stepping even a little bit back, as we grew, some people have several hats, and I was one of those. So I did the HR, I did the marketing, and as we prepared for the transition in the business, we had to find people to fill those roles because they were becoming full-time positions, and no longer was it enough. So the first role that I kind of turned over was the the marketing role. Found somebody that fulfilled that. And then HR came next. And as we were getting ready for my transition into GM and for us to purchase the business, we found somebody to take that role on as well. Okay. Since that transition happened about 6 years ago, the positions really have stayed the same. We haven't added a lot of layers of leadership to it. We've got some team leads that we've added, however, and we're right now at a point where we've got too many people. So we're getting ready to add that middle level of management because there's just too many people, too many technicians under each department, right? So that's where we're looking. So we've added positions and team leads to different departments to help those out. And then the question regarding scaling, one of those positions that we've added was an in-house recruiter. Okay. Being able to add somebody, so we actually split that HR role up a little bit, and that in-house recruiter, she's actually everything retention and recruitment. So
very good.
Culture and care, so basically anything party planning events. We do fun days. Today is actually college day. We did cookie Olympics during the Olympics. So she's in charge of doing those things, making sure that people are retained through the culture of the company, birthday cards, anniversary things, got babies, all those types of things, and then recruitment as well. So she actually came from a recruitment place, was a recruiter at a staffing agency prior to this, and so she's got a background. So we're out, not just waiting for people to answer ads, but sourcing to find people. So I would say that that's helped scale things better in the last couple of years.
I was going to say, have you noticed that the number of applicants that you're interviewing has exponentially increased since bringing on that position?
Absolutely. We've been able to make better hires and more hires and replace, if somebody leaves or if we're looking to add to the team, we're able to do that more quickly and efficiently than what we used to do in the past because it would take away tasks or somebody would be doing the recruiting in between other priorities. If it was HR, we've got, other things that they're doing that it didn't always fit into the day. And it's kind of the last minute, I'm going to spend 20 minutes on it where they should be spending hours on it.
Yeah. I've always been intrigued by people that bring on recruiters. How do you explain to them what you're looking for in a person? Because I know I'm sure you bring on plenty of green people and you hire if there's an experienced tech potentially that would fit, but right, you want to make sure that person is a fit. So how do you communicate that to someone that's coming from outside the industry, outside of your business, what the culture is at Brothers to make sure those candidates do fit what you're looking for?
For this individual, she fits our culture very well. So she is somebody, she is our culture, right? So, and because she's doing some of the things that we're trying to keep people, here with the culture development and the fun days. I think she gets a piece of that through her job, making sure she shadowed the HR person through orientation. So she does a portion of the orientation that revolves around culture. And really just in training, we spent a lot of time with her in the beginning, making sure that she was able to shadow in different departments to understand what each job entailed and what we were looking for. So a lot of communication, a lot of time spent with her, keeping her up to date on, and educating her on our business.
That's wonderful. Now, what you mentioned team leads, I think that's always something that intrigues members, when to bring on kind of that semi-middle level of management. So we'll talk about that position. How many technicians does that team lead assist? When did you decide was the right time? Like, you know what, we really need some help in the field, and we need.
So our team leads are not yet in the technical. So we're not. That's one of the position that we're exploring now, and I don't know that we'll go team leads for that. The team leads that we currently have are actually internal. So we have a team lead for our warehouse team. We have a team lead for our customer service dispatch team. So they're assisting in training, and they're assisting in some of the other elements of that job, and keeping people on task, or answering questions, those types of things. Because even though we have one manager for each of our trades, because we had the fourth person with my brother in that department, we really are kind of a 10 to 1 ratio for the managers, even though not necessarily direct reports. But we're starting to get past that, which is where we need to add that middle level. Actually, I had a call on Monday. We had a separate call that kind of stemmed off our tech group. And we talked exactly about that, about adding that middle level of management, compensation, and what that looks like, and got some feedback from other people.
Yeah. Do you have an ETA on that, or are you still just collecting information and kind of trying to think it through?
No, we're actually, we should have somebody in here middle of September.
That's exciting.
Somebody identified, and it's just kind of ironing out some of those details and putting together, some of the job description of what that person's going to be doing, what their time's going to look like, and the compensation for that.
Is that internal or an external hire?
It'll be an internal hire for this one. Yep. So we'll see. I mean, there's always challenges, with internal hires. There's some good things with that, and always some challenges that come with it.
Sure. So there's a technical aptitude along with understanding the culture and the communication end of it as well.
Correct. Yes.
That's great. That's wonderful. All right. Thank you, Lynn. I peppered you with a few there at the first one, so sorry about that. Lots of good stuff to follow up on. All right, Miki, well, kind of same question to you. Again, you kind of started with at least the last employer from pretty much the ground up, and you guys put the building blocks together. So what positions as you grew kind of freed up your time to focus on growing the business, and then what positions really helped you scale the fastest?
I think the biggest positions that freed up my time and really allowed me to work on the company versus in the company were the ones that took direct reports away from me. So for example, service managers came first, because of course we always have more technicians than we do office teams, right?
Sure.
So having a service manager come in helped remove those direct reports for me. And then the second one would be the call center manager, as again, that was the largest department and the most team members under it. And on some level, those positions were the ones that helped us scale, because they helped shoulder that burden. And again, I didn't have to be involved in every little thing. I didn't have to be involved in every discussion. I didn't have to track everything, because I had managers who could do that for me, which then allowed me to focus on the bigger picture items that we needed to scale.
Right. Very good. Maybe this we're going to get into that maybe in a later question, but I feel the need to ask now. So when you brought or elevated managers at that point, were they internal people, or were they people from outside the industry that, at least initially, right? What do those people look like?
I would love to say that we hired all our managers from internally and it all worked fabulously. Unfortunately, that was not was not what happened. you know, what we learned, what I learned is just because someone is an amazing technician or an amazing call taker, or even maybe they're a great coworker who everyone loves, that doesn't mean they're going to be a good manager. And so when I was hiring for manager positions, I absolutely, you know, posted internally because you never know, but usually they went to outside candidates. Now to go back to your question, is you had said, well, what about in the beginning? Absolutely, in the beginning, we would try to bring up from within, but that's where those lessons were learned. That hey, just because this person is an excellent technician, they're not a good manager. Just because this person is really personable and everyone likes them doesn't make them a good manager. So that was kind of one of those learning curves that I had to learn.
And I think most people do. I think, you know, there's a difference between leaders in your business and managers in your business. I know there's leaders in both your businesses that are probably technicians that don't have anyone report to them, but people look to them and respect them because of the voice and what they do. And I think at every level you see that, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the type to be managing people. So it's a big bullet I've heard from lots of members over the years. Real quick aside, ladies, sorry, because I'm always forget to mention this. Everyone that's watching, if you want to ask questions, I believe you can do so. There's a little box for you to type them into. When we have about 10 minutes left in the hour, I will go ahead and look at those. So if something hits you, please write that as you think of it. So sorry I didn't mention that earlier. So all right, that being said, Lynn, I'm going to throw it back over to you. What are some of the qualities of your best managers, and also where your best managers come from? Again, internally, externally, kind of what Miki and I were talking about.
We have a little bit of both. So we've got a couple managers that came up through the business. Some of them had previously owned previous businesses. So
interesting.
Starting here, they may have started as a technician, but they closed down their business for one reason or another, and or were managers of other businesses, but then started as a technician and then moved into a manager role shortly after. So that's our electrical manager currently has that background. He did run some service calls for about 3 months to fully understand what those technicians went through. Our HVAC manager was the same way, and he's been with us for almost 20 years, and that's how he had his start. So those guys moved their way. Yes, they were internal candidates, but they had a good background previous to that. My plumbing manager has an interesting background because he actually started with me as my marketing guy. So he was the guy that took over marketing for me.
Okay.
And kind of unique. So when we needed to hire for that role, we posted it internally, like Miki said, and externally, we interviewed some external candidates. But I encouraged this guy to apply for the position because I could see so getting into your question about the traits that we're looking for, he was complement to some of the my brother who's more on the technical side and not as personable when it came to relationship building with the technicians. But my plumbing manager had those qualities, so very personable, and not in a way that was just like, hey, I'm going to be your buddy, but in a way that he was able to talk to and relate to the technicians. But he's also able to hold those people accountable, had good organizational skills, and so he had some good ideas, and he really just complements and was a complement to our leadership team in the operations department. So we in identifying other leaders, there are people that like you said, people look up to, that exhibit some of those skills. And then now we're using Culture Index. And
Great.
So I don't have a lot of background and information on that, but prior to that, we were looking at DISC. And we're kind of in the starting stages of Culture Index, which help us and will continue to help us identify those managers. So that middle management position that I was talking about, that person's that we've identified has taken the Culture Index. And so we know what we're getting into prior to, in other ways as well, according to the testing.
Has everyone in the company taken their Culture Index test and they see where they're at?
So we're got a few straggling, and then we've got our training in the next week or so. I think it's the week or the week after. And we have used it already, though, to identify some different candidates. We just made a job offer to a CCR yesterday, and she could potentially be a good leader in that department as well, based off of that, and is a really great fit for either dispatch or CCR. So we're excited.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about it. I know it's an investment, but
When you get a report that comes back and says that somebody moves 84% slower than the rest of the population for a dispatch position, those are applicants that are very easy to maybe not bring in, and
Yeah,
it's very helpful.
wow. For sure. I'm interested because I'm on a bunch of different Facebook groups that in the industry, and obviously we have our internal Facebook pages, and I've seen more than a few people go, a guy who owned his own business is applied for a technician job or a manager job, and I'm just really apprehensive. I'm afraid he's going to come in, wants to learn our secret sauce, and then go do his own thing again. So when you've hired people like that, was there a concern, or are you just not worried about it at the stage you are in the business, or is there any second thought at all at that point?
I think it just depends on, I think every situation is unique, and what were the reasons that they shut down the business. We've got several, one including a guy that's working for us now, a plumber. We ended up buying his customer list and marketing to them, and it was too much. He wasn't making a living at it. He was working to live every day, and wasn't enjoying it, wasn't making a good living at it at that. So
right.
It was, he was good at the technical portion of it, and he recognized that he wasn't good at the business portion of it, and he makes more money working for us than having the stress and the, all the time away from his family trying to do it himself. So I think you have to look at each individual situation and really kind of flesh out the reasons they're looking to, to come on board with your company and what's kind of happened in the past.
Sure. Good answer. Interesting. Miki, let's toss it to you. We talked about the internal versus external thing a little bit, but what, over your years of managing people and managing managers, what are the qualities of some of your very best managers? Was there any kind of consistent themes that you saw in those types of individuals?
At SGI, we talk about people being hungry, humble, and smart. And I would say that held true with my best managers as well. If I had a manager who was hungry and enterprising, but if they weren't humble, if they couldn't take direction, they thought they had nothing to learn, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, if I maybe had someone that was almost too humble, right? They couldn't make a decision, they struggled with tough conversations, that was a problem too. So my best managers had that balance of hungry, humble, and smart. And as Lynn talked about, our company was all about the DISC profiles, and we really focused on our management team, actually our whole team, to try to make sure that we had a balanced team of all the different levels. Because of course, if all my managers are driven and go, that's great, but nobody's on the back end making sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and actually fleshing out, these processes. Right. At the same point, if everybody's really, really conscientious and dialed in on all the T's and the I's, I have nobody driving the vision forward, and you get stuck in the quagmire, right?
Sure.
So that was the other thing that was really important to us. And each position had a little bit different thing that was required. So for example, my human resources, it was important to us that was a very conscientious person. That was somebody who was all about crossing the T's and dotting the I's, because they're dealing with legal stuff, right? And they need to know that. Whereas, for example, a recruiter that we hired, we wanted them to be a high D or a high I, meaning very outgoing and bubbly and sales driven. So every manager varied a little bit, but that the humble, hungry, and smart really applied blanket to all of them.
That's interesting. What about S's? What about our poor S's? Do we just kind of, we're left in the cold? I mean, I'm SI, so.
Oh, the S's. So here's what I will say.
We just want everyone to get along.
I never disqualified an S for management because they were an S. And S is, again, those people that they are the cheerleaders, they are the team builders, they are all about everyone getting along. Yep. I will say the S managers I had required more management from me, because they did have to learn how to have those difficult conversations with people. They did have to learn how to be firm at certain times. And at the same point, they were also great managers because they were all about the teams. Yep. Our management team might be talking about doing something and we're going full blast, and all of a sudden the S is like, well, wait, what about this? What about the team? How is it going to affect the team? So it was great to have that feedback, that voice in there as well. So the S's are important too.
Hey, I just don't want us to be left in the cold. We're employable. I promise. So
you absolutely are. Yes. And they were tremendous, customer service reps, customer service leads.
Sure.
You know, technicians who would take care of the upset clients. Oh my gosh, they were fantastic. So
Yeah, no, that's fun. I was
love our
just teasing
as
you.
well.
That's all right. You don't need to backpedal anymore. That's all right, Miki. I feel loved. All right, let's talk training a little bit. Lynn, you know, you talked about bringing someone in that really had no experience. So in the industry, what does that look like? Onboarding, you know, you go, boy, that person's sharp and they meet all these soft skills and I think they'll be great, but they don't know, you know, anything technically. So what does it onboarding look like for a manager in that kind of a position?
For that person in particular, he'd been with me for about a year, and he had been doing our marketing. So he knew our culture, he knew people, he knew our team.
Right.
So on the technical portion, again, you know, when Miki's talking about the disc and different things, and as well as the technical, we had some balance there, right? So we were able to offset that. I don't know that a non-technical manager works in all situations.
Right.
For us, it was able to work because we had my brother to, you know, handle the technical portions. And now that he's been in this, the manager's been in this position for 5 years, he's picked up enough knowledge and to do what he's needed to do. But
Yeah.
the onboarding for that, he spent a lot of time, he knew one of his challenges was going to be overcoming and getting the respect of the team, especially
Right.
the guys. So that was his first, you know, objective was to get out there. He did ride-alongs with these guys. He
That's
got
great.
to on a personal level,
Yeah.
and you know, got their buy-in to him being in the position, so that he knew that he had them in his corner, so that when the other guys might, you know, have some questions or, you know, maybe voice some concern or, you know, some hesitancy about the change, then he had some other people rallying for him as well.
Yep.
Then he was able to direct them. So if it was a question where, you know, we weren't able to internally answer it, maybe Justin was off, you know, the technical guy, maybe he could divert the questions on the technical basis back to the lead guys, or they're not leads or identified that way, but, you know, these other leaders in and seniority guys in the field with that technical knowledge. So
Yeah.
he really spent a lot of time, he had to utilize the skill set, and he was very good at figuring out how to, again, you know, have that respect and admit when he didn't know, but get them the answers in a different way, in a more creative way, and still get their job done. So that's how his particular onboarding process looks.
Right. Right. So what do you guys do for ongoing training for your management team? I know you've got people that have been 20 years. You know, how do you offer training to someone that's been in a position like that and knows it so well? What do you guys do?
Training in general for our managers?
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah, so we have, I have a business coach that each of my managers has gone through. So it's typically a 6-month process. They do one-on-one coaching. So I meet with the coach and that individual at the very first meeting. We identify some things that we'd like for them to work on. They meet with the coach for an hour a month and have access to her in between, you know, as needed. And we work on some of those things, and then we wrap up their session with basically the 3 of us coming back together, regrouping, going over, you know, the changes and things, you know, that we've seen and the improvements that we've seen over time. So we're able to say, hey, this person maybe needs to work on these following things, but they're also able to bring in their own concerns during that time period as well, and challenges that they're having, and have access to her to bring in tools to resolve those. So it's not, they're just not hearing it internally. Internally, we do some training in our leadership meetings, and also one-on-one. So we have a newer manager for just the last year, and there's the managers work with him, you know, on a one-on-one basis, or I'll work with them just depending on what the topic is, and continually, you know, honing in the skills and the procedures and things that we're looking to, you know, so he's again following our culture and the things that we do here.
That's great. That's wonderful. Miki, same question to you. What did onboarding look like for your managers? I'm sure it probably changed as you guys grew from small to large. So what did that look like then? And then what did, as an additional question, what did ongoing training look like as well?
Sure. So the onboarding for managers was really very specialized to their background and what their position is. So like a service manager, their onboarding would largely be different than a customer service manager, right? But that being said, we have technician and CCR onboarding materials on the hub. And we would start with that because it does a great job of explaining what our company is about, why we do what we do. And that onboarding actually happened with any team member that started with us. And then from there, we would work with them on KPIs, goals, what expectations are for them and their team. That would be followed along just like with Lynn, that would be followed by a lot of ride-alongs or sit-ins if it was an office role. And we would debrief at the end of every day. And that debrief included not just what they saw, but questions they had, and also talking about, okay, well, here's what you should be looking at as a manager. Here's what I want you to be listening for. Here's what I want you to be observing. And then obviously alongside that, we had software training, just like we would a tech or a CSCR. And we did that because we not only needed them to be familiar with the software, but they needed to understand what their team does day to day. And then when it became time to dive a little deeper, they would meet individually with each of their team members, taking them out to coffee or taking them out to lunch, and really talk about, them as a person, what they like, what they don't like, that kind of a thing. And then as far as ongoing training, so we had a bunch of different manager meetings, but once a month, one of the manager meetings was dedicated to training. And it might be talking about a book that we're reading as a team. It might be watching a video on the hub, doing a training kit from the hub, that type of thing. Also, I had a book list of like 100 different books that ranged with everything from customer service to management to culture, kind of, you name the topic, I probably had a couple books on the list. And then we would also have different classes available through all kinds of different, outside organizations. And so my intent for my managers, and really all my employees, but particularly my managers, is that every quarter at a minimum, they were focusing on something to improve about themselves.
That's great. That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Miki.
Support for this podcast comes from Synchrony Financial. Allow homeowners to pay at a rate that fits their budget with a merchant fee that fits yours. Visit www.toolbox.mysynchrony.com for more information.
Welcome back to the show. I'm talking with Lynn Tomasek of Brothers Plumbing, Heating, and Electric in Denver, Colorado, and Miki Stone in SGI Coach. We're talking about how to effectively manage your managers. It's been a hugely insightful conversation, and it's only going to get better. In the second half, we're going to answer these questions. What does a typical meeting schedule look like with your management team? What type of compensation should managers receive? How do you manage struggling managers? What KPIs should managers be watching? And the benefits of hiring a recruiting manager, and so much more. So let's jump back into my conversation with Lynn and Miki. Let's talk about some management meetings. Lynn, how often do you and your management team get together right now? And I've got some follow-ups to that as well.
So I've made mistakes of trying to meet too often, and I've made mistakes of trying to meet not often enough. So it's trying to find the balance. So, we've adjusted over the years. Currently, we do a stand-up huddle every morning. So we get together for 15 to 30 minutes. Each manager for each department debriefs. So we look at the schedule and the weather and how that impacts us, and go down a rundown and all the debriefing of each department. So that's a daily. We do a leadership meeting weekly as a group. So some of the things that Miki talked about are some things that we've done in there. We've done TED Talks in there, so there's some training that's happening in those meetings. We're talking about a variety of policy things. So that's weekly. And then I meet with the operations team every other week. So we used to meet weekly on these individual one-on-ones, and it just became too much. It felt like we were being meeting to death. And we've kind of backed that off a little bit and are doing every other week. And then I meet with each of the department leads every other week as well. So seems to be that balance that we needed. It's often we're obviously communicating and talking in between. Again, we've got other meetings that are happening on a daily, and then impromptu meetings that we may have just to be chatting about certain things, or emails or something along those lines.
In those stand-up morning meetings, are you talking, I'm sure there's certain KPIs that are potentially you're discussing. Are there 3 or 4 you guys just keep a constant pulse on to know if something gets a little askew, it needs immediate addressing?
We're definitely talking about our DMER. So we're for sure looking at, where our numbers, how we're tracking for the month. We also look at, we're fairly new to Service Titan, but we're looking at sold estimates, making sure that, what's been sold, what's been booked. We're looking at some jobs that are in progress. And we look more at the KPIs, some of the others, average ticket, some of these are talked about in different meetings throughout the weeks as well, just depending on the department. But primarily we will kind of look if we're not tracking and kind of dive into some of those other things. We have some email reports that go out. And then depending on if there's some big flags on there after reviewing them, that's when those ones get brought up during the daily huddle or the leadership meeting.
Okay. And those bi-weekly meetings you're having with different team leaders, what are those like? What's the itinerary on those? What is it, KPI driven as well? Are there objectives that you're asking them to meet for the department? What's kind of the itinerary?
Yeah, so KPIs. So we're definitely looking at the different KPIs. There once a month, we'll look at the previous month really in detail. So we're looking at average ticket for the previous month, but we're looking at some of those during the month as well. Callbacks. We track dollar per hour average, so that's one of our KPIs that we look at. So it's revenue divided by hours worked, and that's something that we use for some of our compensation. But and we have some metrics and goals that we look at. So we know if we're tracking, we're not being very efficient, it's going to indicate whether our gross margin is going to be maybe just due to labor is going to be up or down. Right. So that's some of the things that we talk about. Other things, we always are looking at personnel updates. We all want to be kind of abreast on what's going on with certain things. So HR is there. So if there's something that's related, other managers need to know how is it impacting the schedule. So those are some conversations. We got new guys going into trucks. We have that information that's going out. With COVID, there's, conversation revolving around that. So it's kind of as things come up that are needed and they get added to the agenda, as we need to maybe make a policy adjustment, or we're talking about upcoming, things that are upcoming that we need to prepare for as well. So we do a lot of working meetings, try to keep them to that hour time frame, but we do a lot of working for upcoming things.
Sure. Yeah. No 3-hour meetings. No one likes that. So yeah. Miki, I'm gonna toss that question over to you, kind of a bit. How often did your management team get together with your previous employer, and what were kind of what was discussed in those meetings?
So first we had our daily stand-up huddles, and we actually did those in the afternoon because mornings were so crazy and chaotic for our teams. Right. We found that afternoon gave us the best chance to do that. And we really had to work to hold ourselves accountable that, hey, this meeting starts at 1 and it ends at 1:15. We finally started locking the door to the room. And so if the manager was late, they'd stand at the window panel, we'd be like, no, you're not coming in. So we had our daily huddles, and everybody came with their reports ready to go. So we were able to get it done in 15 minutes. And basically the huddle lineup had 8 things. First of all, our HR person brought birthdays and anniversaries that day. And then a couple managers would text those people, hey, happy birthday, happy anniversary. So that was 1 and 2. The third thing she would tell us is of any upcoming new hires and their start dates. Again, just so the whole management team knew what was happening and if they saw any new faces, who they were. And then the fourth thing we talked about as a management team was kudos. Hey, does anybody have any kudos from yesterday? Any kudos from the weekend? And then again, a couple managers would reach out to those people and be like, hey, thank you so much for picking up on call, or hey, great job handling a difficult customer. And then from that, we moved into the DME numbers, our daily management numbers. And so we looked at sales compared to goal. We looked at, for all 3 trades, we looked at average ticket, closing rate for their service calls. And then on the HVAC side, we looked at equipment closing rates, lead turnover rates. We looked at club sales. And then on the customer service side, we would look at their closing rates and also our service call numbers to budget, i.e. is the schedule full? If we're supposed to have 50 calls on the board, do we have 50? Do we have 70? Do we have 30? That kind of a thing. The 6th thing we would look at is weather forecast. We are in Minnesota and we're right on the jet stream, which means if the jet stream goes up, we get the warm weather from the south. If the jet stream goes down, we get the cold weather from Canada. So in Minnesota, we can have a swing of 30 or 40 degrees overnight, which is literally the difference between air conditioning and now we're in heating. So we were always watching the weather.
Sure.
And then the last thing is we would ask if anybody had any pressing issues that applied to the whole group. The rule was if it applied to everyone, we'd talk about it. But if it was, maybe I needed something with bookkeeping, well, that would be me and the admin manager. That wouldn't be appropriate for the daily huddle. And then we always close. Somebody was in charge of closing with either a funny joke or an inspirational quote or something like that. So that was the daily huddle. And then once a week, we took that and we expanded on it. So the once a week for an hour was, in addition to that stuff, we looked at any upcoming events. We looked at any managers who had time off coming up. Hey, how does this affect training? Does staff know who to report to? A big topic was if dispatch is having an issue with a tech, or maybe the board's slow. Who does that person go to? We would talk about any new processes or procedures, and then we would basically do a roundtable. And each department would update what's going good, what's a struggle, what's your focus for this upcoming week. So that's how that differed a little bit from the daily huddles.
Great, fantastic. What's that, Lynn?
I said it sounds very similar to the way that we structure ours.
That's wonderful. That's great. Well, you guys both have had a great company, so no surprise there. I'm amazed that we're already it's 45 past the hour, so we're going to chug along here. Lynn, what compensation? Huge topic as people are looking to add managers. How do I pay them? How are your managers typically compensated? Is it a salary plus some kind of incentive based on gross margin, or what do you typically do? I know you've got a bunch of people, but if you can talk in generalities.
So on the operations side, it is exactly that. We do a base pay, and then they have a monthly incentive bonus, and it is based off of their gross margin.
It's monthly though.
I'm sorry?
It's monthly though, so it based on, I like that. Yeah.
It is, so we have a set date that it's paid after financials are in, and then it's a sliding scale up to 2% of their departmental revenue based off of the gross margin. So if it might be half a percentage of that, if it's lower than in the 50s. We aim for a 60% gross margin, and so they can earn up to 2% if on that sliding scale. And so that's one of the things we'll talk about in our departmental meetings as well, because we'll go over gross margins and talk about maybe why they look the way that they do and how to fix them if they're not looking right. And because we do have the way our licensing is with the three trades. We do have 2 of our managers that hold our license, so they also have a license fee that they're paid on a weekly basis as well.
Okay, yeah.
And for our entire team, also has a incentive bonus. We call it TRIP, TRIP. It's an acronym for Team Revenue Incentive Program. And so we set our monthly goals each month, and if we hit our goal each month, then everybody in the company receives a bonus. If we miss our goal but are still at year to date, then $100. Or if we make up for it the next month, if we're down, but we can make up for it in upcoming months, then we'll back pay $100 for the months that they've made up. And then at the end of the year, they receive, if we hit our annual goal, everybody receives an annual incentive as well. So it keeps everybody, so even accounting gets that, customer service, the warehouse team, it keeps everybody kind of on the rise, and we send out a daily email so everybody knows where we're tracking for that and what we can do to, what our averages need to be that day to make those numbers.
I love that. That's great. Good insight there. Thank you, Lynn. Miki, how about, what did you guys do for managers? What was their compensation? Was it, again, some kind of gross margin type of bonus? Please share.
Yeah, there are so many ways to skin a cat in this situation. So, one of the companies I was with is all the managers were bonused off of net profit. And, the company had to hit X before manager bonuses were paid out. And the general manager, who would oversee really all the company overhead and had control over, insurance and cell phone bills and that kind of stuff, they would have a larger bonus as opposed to the maybe like the middle managers who were controlling kind of gross margin, labor, parts, that kind of a thing. And it would basically go, if the goal for the company was 15% net profit, they would get a bonus on everything between 15 and 16%. And then if they were 17%, they would get a bonus, a bigger bonus of everything between 15 and 17, and then a bigger bonus of everything between 15 and 18. So the incentive was there for everyone to always have their eye on costs and overall company profitability. Other ones I've seen and that I've been under that I've really liked is really taking those managers and bonusing them on what they can control. Part of the issue, like let's say a service manager and bonusing them on net profit, we absolutely want them to be watching costs everywhere they can. However, what they have direct control over is their employees. How much overtime is there? Are they well trained? How many callbacks are we having? That kind of a thing. And so what they would do is, or what I would do is, they would have a base income. And as an example, let's say they wanted $100,000. Well, their base would maybe be $40,000, but 20% was based off of gross margin, which could get them up to $60,000. And then another 20% was based off of them achieving their individual goals. Well, that gets them off to $80,000. And then the last 20% is based off of the department hitting their KPIs. Are they hitting their average tickets? Are they hitting their closing rates? And that's how they get up to 100,000. So that's another model I've seen. Other ones I've seen a higher base pay of, like, to use that same example, maybe the base is 80,000, but they get a 0.1% bonus of anything over 50% gross. And I would say that too, all bonuses were always based on, similar to my other example of net profitability, you have to hit this gross. Like if you're not hitting this gross, you're not doing your job. But then we're going to bonus you for everything over that. Over 50%.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Miki.
And the other thing I would say too is, monthly. I agree with Lynn. Monthly is by far the best.
Yes.
Weekly gets to be an administrative nightmare. And yearly, it's just too far down until you get to like October and November. So I'm with Lynn on that. Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I like that because, if you do have a rough month and, it's a quarterly goal, no, you don't have to deal with people giving up. You got a new start just a couple of weeks away. Lynn, question you, when you're having these meetings with your technician or with your management team and certain KPIs, boy, they just seem to be constantly struggling with something. Hopefully you don't have to deal with this, but I'm sure there's always issues. People are people. What do you do with a manager that just seems to be hitting a rough patch, right? You see it in the management meetings, you just see it in just conversing with them. You can tell maybe something's going on in their personal life. How do you address that situation?
Just kind of, first of all, just finding out what's going on. So, this happened here recently, and it's just, you can tell something's bothering them. You can tell that they're just off, that they're just not themselves. And so, finding a good time, I think timing's everything. So, sometimes it's not just diving into it that day. Sometimes it's just watching and observing, and then finding the right timing to have a good conversation, just a very gentle, like, hey, I noticed that something's off. How are you? And sometimes it's just that to kind of get them talking, and then finding out what it is. Is it something personal? Is it something business? What can we do to support them if it's personal? And then if it's business, what those challenges are. And then depending on the business portion of it, depending on what what may be going on, it may be that they're having challenges with their technicians. So it's finding out what we need to do to support them. It might lead into often meetings where we're focused on something, we're having check-ins, might involve other people in the company. So we've had some challenges with some KPIs and some different things, but it may be involving other departments to kind of get involved. So we're talking through it, and then utilizing the skill set. Again, we have a skill set of our leadership team that complements each other. So sometimes it's not just me, and sometimes it's buddying up with somebody. So we really just look at the individual situation and kind of dive in. But a lot of times it's just opening up and having that conversation, finding out what it is. And then sometimes those specialized meetings to dig deeper.
That's great. Miki, was that kind of your same situation? It's just talking to someone, pull them aside and figure out what's really going on, just put a private conversation.
Yeah, it's very personalized, right? So if it's a new manager, 90 days, 6 months, obviously they're onboarding, they're getting a ton of new stuff thrown at them. But as we get further along, if we continue to have issues, maybe unfortunately I put the wrong person in that spot.
Yeah.
But let's say it's a manager who's been with me for a while. They're traditionally a good performer, and yeah, I see they start to struggle in areas. It's exactly as Lynn said. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to talk to them. With my managers, we would have weekly one-on-ones as well. So I had a pretty good relationship with my management team, where I could find out what was going on. And sometimes it was personal. Sometimes it was that they needed training in an area. Sometimes I would find that maybe they were struggling because they needed to be motivated differently. When they first became a manager 5 years ago, they were motivated by money. Well, they're comfortable now and they're still motivated by money, but what's more important to them now is family time. So now I change how I'm motivating them to, hey, if your department hits this goal this month, I'm going to send your family to Wisconsin Dells, which is a couple hours away from us.
Yeah.
Just different things like that. So
that's great.
But yeah, that's all you can do is really figure out what's going on, and again, set the expectations and just continue to follow up on those.
That's wonderful. All right, we've just gone through a ton of time. I always am shocked by it. I'm going to go to some of the questions here, and ladies, just feel free to chime in with whomever has something to share. The first question is from our friends from Brent from Sirius Plumbing and Air Conditioning. Brent asked, "What KPIs / reports do you use to set the goals for your managers?" So, Lynn, you want to take that? What KPIs / reports do you use to set the goals for your managers?
Well, as I mentioned before, gross margin is number one. So we're looking at, labor, we're looking at materials, they're controlling those things, making sure we're priced right. So that's first and foremost. And then diving into, we've got a report that goes out weekly or twice a week, and it is, average ticket. So we're looking at their average ticket, their sales. We got to look at their callbacks. And also, like I mentioned before, a closing rate, and then their dollar per hour average. As I mentioned before, that's a KPI that we look at, and so we really pay attention to that. So our report, if we put too much on it, it gets you're just overwhelmed, and you really can't focus in on any one thing. So trying to keep it to just a handful of things is super important, I think, instead of and then if you need to dive deeper into certain areas, then you can do that. But those are the things that we.
Wonderful. Miki, kind of same question to you. What KPIs are you guys really honed in on with your managers?
Yeah, what Lynn said. For my managers, again, if they controlled gross margin, so for example, my bookkeeper wouldn't make sense to bonus them on gross margin, right? But like my service managers, gross margin, average ticket, closing rate in the field, and for HVAC, lead turnovers. And then on the customer service side, it was call center closing rates and then service call numbers to budget. So again, if we need 50 calls, do we have 50 calls?
There you go. Very good. Let's see. Next question was, do each of you have daily huddle agendas? If so, could you share it? Miki and Lynn listed a lot of stuff. I don't know, Miki, you want to, or Lynn, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, because Miki did a better job explaining what hers looked like. We open up with our customer service, the call goal, right? So we're looking at, are we meeting the call goal for the next couple of days? Are we overbooked? Are we underbooked in each department? Again, weather in Denver here impacts us as well. So we may be, today we might be 100 degrees and, September, let's say, and then in 2 weeks or a week, we're looking, we know that the weather's going to change, or we've got a snowstorm coming in or something. So that'll, definitely impact our call counts and things. So that's one thing. Personnel updates in each department, time off in each department. So they're going over that if somebody has to leave early. From there, we go into our marketing. So we're looking at our marketing manager. So what are we doing? If we're short on calls, where are we making adjustments? Are we, outbounding? Are we doing some auto dials for members? Adjusting our PPC so everybody's kind of on the page with that. Our warehouse guy will get updates on jobs. So the stage jobs, we have any material issues, communicating that. And then each of the departmental managers talk about, any job stuff, personnel things, time off. Accounting talks about DMER and any kind of KPIs. Culture, we do the birthdays and all the hires exactly like Miki said. And then I kind of wrap up the meeting with some just various, just depending on what the topic is, I'll have some various little announcements or conversations to have.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, Miki, and I think you outlined yours pretty well. I don't know, do you have anything to add about what your huddles looked like back in the day?
I think one of the things, let me see if this works. We're going to try to do something crazy because why wouldn't we?
Watch out.
Let's see what happens here. Can you guys see my screen by chance or not?
I saw it. It just was really small, at least for me.
Well, I thought I'd just pull it up and see if it worked. But this, I have a printout of like what our huddle looked like. So for anyone that wants it, we will figure out how to get it to you.
Yeah. mstone@yoursgi.com. That's one way.
Yeah. Email me and I will email it back.
There you go. Very good. All right. Another question. I think this is an interesting one for Lynn. I have considered hiring a recruiter. However, with a severe lack of available talent, this seems like a waste. Has your recruiter been able to find candidates lately?
The answer is yes, because she's not sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. She's actually going out and being proactive. So again, with her background in different areas, we treat marketing or recruiting like we do marketing. So everywhere that you market, we're just marketing for employees instead of customers. And so we're doing direct mail. We're doing direct mail. We're sourcing on the different sites, posting the different ads. We've got radio going. We're managing our website. And she's got Craigslist and Facebook and social media and all those things. And then she's out there sourcing, and she'll even do events and different things like that. So she definitely has enough to do, and finding candidates. It was not a waste. When you look for us, it wasn't, because when you look at how much revenue, one year we were short on revenue, not for lack of work, but for lack of people. And for what we were short revenue that year due to the lack of trucks on the road, and you compare that to the wage you're going to pay somebody, it was a no-brainer. It was absolutely a no-brainer to bring somebody in and the return on the investment there. So, and again, she has more duties than just recruiting because she's all things culture. So we actually implemented an incentive plan for her, a bonus, where she's bonused over a year for a candidate that not only she brings on, but that stays with us. So it's good.
Oh, that's great.
And that she's doing all the things, reaching out and doing those things to make sure that they're happy and staying with us, for the long term.
I'm sure you have, knowing you probably have a good solid job description that you've carved out for this individual. And how did you put that together? Did you just talk to other members and just cobble something together?
I believe it started that way, and then it's evolved. I think we had another member that had a position, and kind of what our needs were. So and I'm a big checklist person, so processes, procedures. So her process and procedure and checklists are very well documented. What her daily tasks are going to be, and she's a rock star on top of that. So she's even taken it and documented and taken it to a whole other level than we started at.
I love that. Last question is really a comment trip. I love it. That's a great takeaway. So very good. Thank you, Lynn. I have one final question. I just like to finish up. Lynn, what are, this kind of maybe the hardest one too, what are some of the hardest lessons you've learned in managing managers over the years, and something that you would, you wish someone would have told you and you'd love to tell somebody else?
I think that probably that not every, Miki had mentioned it, just because you're a top performer, not everybody is made out for the leadership role. So I think we've made the mistake of putting the wrong people either in some sort of leadership role. It's not necessarily just operations, but, take our, when we first had a call center manager, we took our best dispatcher and she became our call center manager. We lost her shortly after. So really vetting out, some of those things of again, what makes them good for the role? What is the role? What are the requirements for the role? Are they a good fit in several different categories and ways? And do they fit in with the leadership team? I think that's one of the biggest mistakes and something I wish we would have changed or did differently in the beginning.
Did you offer that job to the dispatcher, or did she apply for it?
This is probably 15 years ago for this particular one that I'm mentioning.
Sure.
And we approached her with it. We knew we needed to start, developing that role. Now we're more sophisticated. We internally post the position and externally post the position. We have a process that we put in place. We go through it very detailed, and we're more aware of those things. Not saying we still have mistakes, but we do better than like 15 years ago. We were a little less organized.
Sure. What happens though if you have an A player, really high performing person apply for a management position, and you guys all go, look, I just don't see it. How do you have that conversation? How do you make sure that you hopefully don't lose lose them in the position that they are in and excel at.
And that's a conversation during the interview. If you don't get this role, what does the future look like here for you at Brothers? And just kind of finding out what's in their head. Many of them, I don't think we've lost anybody due to that reason. But some of it's just kind of sharing with them the requirements of the position and explaining, what's good, but where they need to do some improvement in order for us to have chosen them. That's, I think, huge. And then for them to understand, that we've made a different choice and why that person was selected. I think that's super helpful when they, if they have an understanding, and sometimes they come to their own conclusion that they weren't a good fit and the other applicant was a better fit. So kind of crafting that conversation accordingly so you kind of help them get to the same conclusion we got to.
That's great. You address it though. You don't just let it go. You don't just not talk about it. That's great.
Yeah, we can't not just talk about it, because that's a word forever then.
Right. Very good. All right. Thank you, Lynn, very, very much. Miki, same question to you, just kind of wrapping up. What's some of the hardest lessons you learned in managing managers, and something you wish someone would have told you along the way to make life a little easier?
Well, definitely, as Lynn mentioned, that just a good leader does not make a good manager. But besides that, that you have to manage your managers. I had this idea that if I hired someone, particularly externally, again, we're learning, that will be we're a manager at XYZ, then surely they can be a good manager here. That's not the case. So I would say that would be the second most important thing, is you do have to manage your managers. You need to send them through onboarding just like a regular employee. They need to be introduced to the company. You need to make sure they know everything that you want them to know. Basically, don't just assume they're going to be able to go on autopilot.
Right. Very good. Well, wonderful. Well, ladies, thank you so very, very much for your time. This was a wonderful conversation. I'm always happy when I get to see both of you. So that was a cherry on the top. So thank you for all your time, your insight, and just can't thank you enough. For those of you watching, thank you for spending a little more than an hour with us. This was all recorded. It should be on the hub within a day or two. And then we also have been sharing it through our Success Group International YouTube page, probably about a month or so later. So if you're a person that likes to consume stuff while on the go, maybe in the car, you can listen to it on YouTube or also our podcast player. So look for it there. So with that, thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great day. That's Lynn Tomasek of Brothers Plumbing, Heating, and Electric in Denver, Colorado, and Miki Stone with SGI on how to effectively manage your managers. Thanks for joining us. If you feel like you have a great story worth sharing that would also help other contractors, please email me at bhouchin@yoursgi.com. Also, if you enjoyed today's episode, if you're on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. If you're on your favorite podcast player, leave us a 5-star review. And please join us for future episodes. It's my promise to you that we will continue to interview successful contractors and other influential individuals in the residential contracting world. This is The Successful Contractor, powered by Success Group International.
Support for this podcast comes from Rheem. Brothers Richard and Donald Rheem founded Rheem Manufacturing Company in Emeryville, California in 1925. The company has produced a number of cutting-edge products in its 89 years of operation. Today, Rheem is North America's only manufacturer of HVAC, water heating, pool and spa heating, and commercial refrigeration solutions. For more information, go to rheem.com. The Successful Contractor podcast is part of the Success Group International family. SGI is the largest member-owned best practices organization for independent residential services contractors. SGI provides its members a competitive edge through proven proprietary management tools and expertise, marketing programs, training, and group buying power, along with a highly active and eager to help membership. For more information about Success Group International, visit www.yoursgi.com.